Hello, I'm Tim Gray, and welcome back to Tim Gray TV. Yes, it's been a long time since we've published an episode of Tim Gray TV. We've been traveling all over the place, working and photographing along the way. We've been to Italy and France and Switzerland, various countries in Central America, all over the United States. It's been a whirlwind, and it's kept us away from producing Tim Gray TV, but we are back. And thank you for tuning back in. And thanks to those of you who wrote in wondering where Tim Gray TV was and when it's coming back. Well, it's back now. As we were traveling around, photographing all over the place, I noticed there were a great many photographers who were using lenses without the lens shade attached. You should always have, I should have a lens shade attached here. I don't know where, over here. There it is. Exactly where shouldn't have found it. It should have been right on the lens itself. Very important. If you've got a lens shade, use it. If the lens came with a lens shade, use it. If you don't have it, replace it. But be sure to replace it with the lens shade specifically designed for the lens that you're using. So first off, why is a lens shade important? Well, in a word, two words actually, lens flare. A lens shade will help prevent lens flare. And the reason for that is it serves as a shade for the lens itself. I'll go ahead and attach the lens hood. Notice that I'm attaching it the correct way with the elements of that lens hood sticking outward, not in the stowed position, which is only for when you're going to put away your lens or your camera. So I'll put that lens hood onto the lens, and now I'm shading the front of the lens, which is especially important when the light source, generally the sun, is in front of the lens. If the sun is in the frame, then that flare that you're going to get from the sun shining into the lens and bouncing back and forth on those internal lens elements, you can't avoid the lens flare in that situation. But when the sun is over toward the sides, not in the frame, but still in front of the front lens element, you're still at risk of lens flare, and that's what the shade is going to help prevent by shading the lens. Now you might notice on a wide angle lens, the lens shade has a kind of funny shape to it. We've got larger flanges up on the top, shorter ones on the side. There's a very good reason for that. On a telephoto lens, we have a more cylindrical lens shade. It seems to mostly serve to make that long lens look all the more imposing and impressive, but it too is shading the lens. But we have more of a concern with a wide-angle lens because we could vignette. We essentially could have the lens shade in the frame, which would darken the edges of the frame. And so we want to maximize the shading of the light source without creating vignetting, thus the funny shape for that lens shade. Now, I hear a lot of photographers say, well, I like to shoot with the sun behind me, so I don't need to worry about a lens shade. Fair enough, as long as you never turn around. So I think you should always have that lens shade on the lens because you never know when something interesting is going to happen back there, and you turn around to get that shot, and now you've got the sun potentially in front of your lens. So it's a good idea to always keep that lens shade on the lens. It's also a nice protective measure. If you bump the front of that lens into something, the lens shade can provide a little bit of extra protection. So just a very good practice in general to use that lens shade. Be sure to use the correct lens shade for the specific lens you're using. So use that tip, use it wisely, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Tim Gray TV.